Hello and welcome to Design Tip of the Week from YesI'mADesigner.com. My name is Martin Perhiniak, and in this video I'm going to show you how to change colors in Photoshop. And what is a better example to show that than a chameleon, where we can really see how all these beautiful colors will change. Well, first of all, I already created a selection here, so we don't have to spend time with that. And by the way, it's also a good thing to learn that whenever you create a selection, but you don't want to use it straight away, it's a good idea to save it from the select menu, where you can find save and load selection. And what happens is you are going to save it as a channel. So whatever you save is going to be stored in the channels panel. So there's my chameleon selection. And there's two ways to load that quickly back. Either Command or Control click on that icon in the channels panel, which will load it in, or of course you can go to select and choose load selection. Here you will find all your saved selections. So now that I loaded in the selection, I can go back to my layers panel to see what's going to happen next and use the adjustments panel to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. When you have a selection, the adjustment will only affect the selected areas. So if I click on hue saturation here, I will see that the selection is added as a layer mask to my hue saturation adjustment layer, which is great because now whatever I do will only affect the chameleon in this case and not the branch and not the background. So for example, if I start playing around with the hue, you can see how it's going to affect only the chameleon. So that is a great way to work in Photoshop because it keeps it completely non-destructive. So all your changes can be amended later on. If I want to, I can see it before and after by just turning on and off the adjustment layer. And I can also come back to make my changes in the properties panel. One of the things you can do in the hue saturation adjustment layer is that you can change the hue. As you can see, it can go all around the hue wheel, so the 360 degrees of all the different colors. And then you can also increase or decrease the saturation. But to be honest, I usually use an additional adjustment layer for that. So if I want to increase or decrease the intensity of the colors, for that it's better to use the Vibrance Adjustment layer. And also for lightness, I don't really prefer to use this adjustment layer, so to change the brightness of a layer, because it's not really working in a way that you would expect it to work. So it won't increase the brightness properly. It actually really like washes out all the colors and both directions. If you make it darker, again, it doesn't really look natural. So most of the times I only use the hue option from this adjustment layer. But of course, you can also use another interesting option called Colorize, which is going to turn all the colors into the same hue. And basically, it creates a monochromatic effect. Here, I usually use the saturation to increase it or decrease it. And of course, you can change the hue to select which color you want to add as a monochromatic effect. So that's also interesting. But if you don't use Colorize, then keep in mind that the harmony between them will stay the same, and it just spins them around the hue wheel. So what if you want to only change a specific color and not all of these colors? So although we separated the chameleon from the background with the selection, we still only want to affect one of these specific colors on the chameleon. Let's say this strong, darker green. All these spots on the chameleon, that's the only one I want to change, let's say, to purple. So in that case, you can use, instead of master, one of these colors. So in this case, I would choose greens. And it will automatically create a filtering on the adjustment layer. Here you can see the filtering, or it's more like a tolerance. So between these colors, between these endpoints, it's going to target those colors, and I will be able to change the hue only on those. So if I now change this value here on the top, you can see only those darker green spots will change in the image. So this is also very useful because this way you can really target individual colors and change them around. And the good news that you can use the same adjustment layer to change multiple specific colors, with the same adjustment layer. So I change the greens to purple, but then I go into it and maybe select the yellows, and I can change the yellows to maybe a stronger green, or I can change them to red or something like that. So as you can see, you have complete freedom of how you change the colors. So now if I turn this on and off, you can see I change them in actually different directions. The original green spots are now more purple, and the original yellow colors are now more blue and green. So I mentioned earlier that the saturation is something I wouldn't really change, only if I use Colorize on the hue saturation adjustment layer. So how would I increase the intensity of the colors? Well, for that, I would go back to the adjustments panel, and I would add the Vibrance Adjustment layer. Once I select this, I will see both vibrance and saturation here, but most of the time I would use vibrance to increase the intensity of colors, because this is a much more subtle way to increase them than using saturation. So even in this adjustment, I wouldn't use saturation, I would stick to vibrance. It will normalize the intensity of colors, so it won't increase the already intense colors further. It will just bring the less intense colors up to the level of the already intense colors in the image. And of course, if you want, you can make sure that it's also going to use the same selection. And the way I would do that in this case, because at the moment you can see my vibrance adjustment not only affects the chameleon but the background and the branch as well. So if I only want to target the chameleon, what I would do is to first of all right click on this empty mask and delete it. So every adjustment layer automatically comes together with a mask. But if you don't have any selection before you create the adjustment, then you won't see anything in the mask. It will be just a blank white mask. Then select the two adjustment layers together, press Command or Control G to group them together, and you can even call them adjustments. And once you have that ready, you can open up the group and simply drag and drop the mask of the hue saturation adjustment onto the layer group. Once you have it there, it's going to affect both the vibrance and the hue saturation adjustment layers. So now I can see if I turn it on and off, it only affects the chameleon, and also the hue saturation will only affect the chameleon. So that's the way you change colors most of the time in Photoshop. Remember, it's always good to make selections and use them on your adjustment layers. And remember, hue saturation and vibrance is probably the two most important features that you need to play around with colors on your images. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and if you want to learn more, make sure you join me next time as well here on YesI'mADesigner.com. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Facebook, Twitter or Google+. Also, if you want to learn more about design, check out my in-depth online courses on my website, YesI'mADesigner.com.